Chapter 5. Philip and I, we ran toward the safe room, each step heavy with exhaustion, muscles burning, heart pounding in my chest. Inside, disarray-witted, Andy thrashed against Moria's hold, pointing at shadows no one else could see. Philip rushed to him at once, holding on as Andy screamed about death, about shapes that wanted his soul, his life. He kept shouting about red threads, threads drifting along his nape, along everyone's nape. He covered it, then his neck, crying anxiously, begging for help. John Ray and his fellow officers stared, unable to comprehend what was happening, as the lights began to flicker and every glass around us vibrated. I shouted and ordered them to man the entrance at once. John Ray and 2 others ran toward the front. Some checked the back exit, and 2 more stayed behind, bearing witness to the horror unfolding. Moria screamed at the top of her lungs, demanding to know what was happening, what was wrong with her son. Philip gazed at me with understanding, worried eyes. I moved closer and held Andy's hand, trying to pull him back from the edge of terror engulfing us, but his words froze me in place. He spoke names I shouldn't have heard. Brenda, Lena, my wife, my daughter. Even worse, he claimed he saw them in the room. My wife had died with my unborn daughter 4 years ago, shot during a chaotic rally. They weren't participants, only bystanders caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. How could he know that? What the fuck was happening? Then, suddenly, the room shifted around us, subtle yet unambiguous. Shadows pooled unnaturally in the corners. The walls seemed to tighten, and the ceiling pressed lower. Andy's eyes darted to the floor, his hand shuddering as he tried to avoid the dark figures only he could see. Slowly, he pointed toward my back, insisting the shapes were standing there, right behind me. Every instinct screamed to turn, but when I did, nothing met my eyes, only the flickering fluorescent lights and the empty corners of the safe room. In my account, I could hear vague whispers. The other officers were shaking, their resolve melting under the weight of the unknown force pinning our sanity down. Gravity dragged heavier than it should have, and Andy collapsed into Moria and Philip's arms. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the pressure lifted, light stabilized, the air thinned, and silence stretched taut, leaving only the resonance of what had passed. His parents held him close, their faces twisted with fear and guilt, searching for answers I didn't have. I couldn't explain how he had known my family, how he could see invisible things, how impossibility, the paranormal, had breached this room. There were no answers yet, only questions, and Andy's wide, terrified eyes. I let the mood settle into a fragile calm before returning to my office, leaving the tremors behind. One of the officers, Shannon, who was standing nervously in the hallway, approached me. Her eyes were strained with fright. Her honest, fragile questions about the otherworldly encounter earlier made the whole station crumble in its purpose to protect. She was right. This was beyond us. Years of training couldn't fathom what the universe had just laid in front of us. The impossible was now breaking our oath and lucidity to smithereens. Minutes passed, silence and nervousness filling even the tightest corners of the station. And this ever-growing nightmare expanded to another level when my phone buzzed and Detective Darwin's name flashed across the screen. I picked up the call immediately. He reported that the old woman's body had been taken for autopsy, routine enough, until he returned to the scene of the blood-painted wall. I could sense the foreboding tone in his voice. He said the bits of skin and flesh we'd documented at the bridge were gone, not moved, not torn away, gone, as if the wall itself had swallowed them. Both he and the forensic officer had seen it happen, right in front of their eyes. At first they tried to explain it. Darwin thought maybe rainwater had loosened the tissue, maybe it had slipped deeper into cracks. The forensic tech suggested chemical leaching, absorption through porous cement, even microbial decay accelerated by moisture. Yet, none of it held. The tissue wasn't washed away, and it wasn't decayed. It had been drawn inward, pulled into the concrete, as if the wall itself were a living being. In the end, the harder they searched for logic, the more intolerable it became. Evidence, physical cul-de-sac, nothing made sense. Darwin's final words were blunt, heavy. There was something beyond normal comprehension. I held the earpiece closer, forcing my voice to remain steady, even as my thoughts spun out of control. I told Darwin everything. The hexagram traced on the map, the ritualistic pattern carved into the city, through blood and flesh, the 7 victims, and most importantly, Andy at the center, marked as the final offering. Then I described what had happened earlier, at exactly 11 p.m., when the safe room seemed to implode around us. I stated to him that Andy had screamed at shadows only he could see, insisting on red threads winding around people's napes, and then spoke names no living soul should have known, Brenda and Lena. On the other end, I heard Darwin gasp. He knew about my wife and unborn daughter. Both had been gone for years. The silence on the line was heavier than words. I could hear Darwin's breathing, slow and burdened, the sound of a man crumpled by questions with no answers. The same questions I carried. What was happening? What were we up against? Without saying it aloud, we both understood what needed to be done. Darwin would remain at the crime scene, meticulously scouring every trace for a clue to the killer's intent. I would hold the line at the precinct, guarding Andy with the officers and keeping him alive, while the others were combing the undercity, searching for the murderer before he performed the final grotesque ritual. We needed more than protection. We needed foresight. When and how the murderer would strike. So, I placed my phone on a phone dock, switching the audio call to video, and faced it toward the projected map on the wall. I hurriedly traced the edges of the inner hexagon of the hexagram across the map, relaying the approximate boundary measurements to Darwin. At the same time, he rallied officers in the field, giving sharp, precise instructions that demanded every corner of the sweep be covered. In the station, I stood back and watched the men and women move with grim resolve. Their shoulders bore the weight of the horrendous, enigmatic series of events, their eyes sharpened by a horror they couldn't name. The precinct buzzed with tension. Everyone was ready, yet none of us was truly prepared for what might come. It was past midnight. I still hadn't gotten good news from Darwin or the officers who were looking for the murderer. The rain hadn't stopped hammering the streets. It erased footprints, drenching every trace of whatever that thing was that caused these inhumane crimes. Its steady assault turned the city into a roiling sheet of reflections. Everyone in the station was on high alert. Anyone moving past the building, anyone who paused outside, all of them became suspects. A sudden silhouette thrown against the window set the lobby on edge. Conversation narrowed to whispers and tight, nervous chattering about what we were really up against. The talk wasn't all strategy. Some of it strayed into the unnameable, the impossible things we'd seen. The word supernatural hovered in the air, spoken only by those exhausted enough to let superstition creep in. There was no rest for the wicked, and none for what was to come. That much was certain. For us, only work, long hours, and the stubborn conviction that if we didn't act, something would take another life and open our damnation and call it a passage. And I had already failed once. I wouldn't let it happen again. The clock had just struck 12:30 when the station plunged into darkness. My PC flickered once, then died, the words I had been clinging to evaporating with the light. The buzz of the fluorescent lamps vanished, followed by the deeper whir of the building itself. Air vents, water pumps, all silenced in an instant. There was a sudden, eerie stillness. The dark carried mass. The faint smell of ozone suspended in the air, piercing and electric, as if lightning had struck too close. My ears rang with the absence of machines, of voices, of safety. Outside, the rain pressed harder against the glass, the only constant in a world that had just been stripped bare. Then Moria's scream tore through the silence from the safe room. My body jerked before thought could catch up. I drew my gun, snapped on the flashlight fixed to the barrel, and ran. Corridors lit with frantic beams as officers converged on the safe room, weapons raised, light cutting through the dark. Andy and his parents were shaken but alive. Relief washed over me, brief but grounding. A flash of lightning split the sky. For an instant, the station glowed silver, every corner alive with stark shadows, every face pulled tight. Thunder followed, low and guttural, rattling the walls. The officers gripped their weapons harder. Johnry's light sliced through the storm, fixed on the entrance doors. I rushed to his side. Through the rain-lashed glass, a silhouette stood unmoving. A man, drenched from head to toe, his coat plastered against him like a second skin. A fedora brim shattered his face, though lightning revealed flashes, pale jawline, sharp cheekbones. He didn't knock. He didn't move. He simply stood, rain streaming down, watching.